outside of just making sure that there's missions for like combat multi-crew stuff, it's also if you want people to do all of this kind of gameplay, from engineering to I don't know, janitor work to sitting at the brig on the Polaris. I'm not really sure how many different things are going to have a lot of gameplay, but like if you want people to do multi-crew gameplay, you gotta give them opportunities to try that outside of PvP focused locations. And I wonder, are we ever going to be in a scenario where you can go to a job board and like click a mission and it spawns like a NPC controlled or an AI controlled Polaris, and you get to go and run a mission as an engineer on that Polaris? Like no other player is involved. This is just sort of like instead of giving you a mining contract as a prospector, they give you an engineering contract on some random ship. Like, would that ever be a thing that lets people try multi-crew gameplay?
I actually think maybe. Which normally I would be like, nah, you're losing it, Space Tomato.
It's okay. I do often.
At CitizenCon, when they were talking about 1.0, they mentioned that some high-end like PvE content will involve fleet battles. And I believe the word commanding was mentioned in there, or like some variation of that. So I would not be surprised if that is on the cards for them, is for you to have a PvE mission where you do end up on one of these ships and you get to experience that content, at least one way.
It's basically just like taking a side mission out of Squadron 42 and putting them in, right? Because they're saying they're not going to do NPC crew for 1.0, but I wonder how that's different.
I imagine it'll be different because, they're probably scripted AI in this sort of situation rather than like actual AI, right?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
So the kind of missions that I would imagine is like you said. So you've got this engineering contracts to hop into a Polaris and you've got to repair it, and then it goes through and it is guaranteed going to get hit here, and now it takes damage over here. Go heal it. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
You can script that. It'll be fun content still, but that would skirt the no AI on 1.0.
Man, it'd be so freaking immersive to do that. Like, I can't even just getting to run missions for like 2 hours out on a capital ship with no other players there. You're just like in a sandbox, basically.
Very cool.
Also, for multi-crew gameplay to shine, I feel like they need to get pay in a better place, which they keep talking about a lot, like economy and stuff. But you got to be able to, if they're gonna say that the Polaris is super expensive to run and therefore not taken out often, then you kind of got to make sure that the missions you assign for that, like you said, would pay you enough money to pay all the people on board.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there has to be incentive, and the economy balancing with missions will hopefully do that. The economy team has now only existed for a little over a year, or at the very least, that's when they started talking in monthly reports.
Yeah.
And I don't know really if this sort of stuff is on their radar at the moment, but once again, that's because the missions aren't there yet. So it's like, what are you going to balance anyway? You're not about to turn a solo VHRT into like 100,000 UEC or whatever, because that'd be nuts. So I'm sure it will be on their radar. I've really liked all of their economy changes so far. So I'm not concerned for like the payout for all those missions and stuff. I am maybe a little bit concerned about whether those missions will be fun. and that's sort of what I want to see, is like, what even are the ideas that you guys want to do? Are you just going to, ramp up the current missions by difficulty and just add more ships? Are you going to, what I would want you to do, sort of replicate, phase 3 of this current dynamic event and have those kinds of missions be more what the stuff like the Polaris is designed for? Love to hear him talk about that.
Something I've noticed while playing through the contested zones in Pyro has been, and we haven't run into players very much, so that's probably made it a little bit more enjoyable, to be honest, but is like the more long-term feeling of going through that combat instead of going into a bunker, clearing out 15 people, maybe getting an injury and then limping back to your ship. This is like you're going through room after room. You're having to deal with those injuries. You're having to deal with running out of ammo and weapons, and it teaches you to play in a different way. I hope that that's what we would see for multi-crew ship missions. It's like they kind of extend the encounter and do things that make you have to take advantage of your ship having more facilities.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think they essentially with the contested zones, it feels like they sort of understood what made like Siege of Orison really enjoyable, which was moving room to room, section to section of each platform, and constantly being in this combat situation, and then being able to turn that into, or that idea into, a smaller sort of, or just different aesthetic style of that gameplay was really smart. Because we've been enjoying it a ton ourselves as well, but it'd be nice to see that stuff other than just FPS combat.
Yeah, agreed. Do you think that this focus that we've been talking about on capital ships, on now this sort of period of shining for multi-crew ships and all that jazz, do you think this stuff is leaving solo players out to dry? Can they take part in capital ship gameplay or multi-crew ship gameplay or any of this stuff that we're talking about, or is this mostly focused on orgs and large groups?
I played the fifth. Okay. I have been very vocal that like I love solo players, but that this is a multiplayer game. If there is a bit of content in this game that incentivizes multiplayer aspects, tough is sort of where I'm at, and it's honestly the rudest I've been in my life. But it's a weird thing. I will say, like, we just talked about, well, there could be these PvE missions for solo players to experience that gameplay, and that could still be a way for them to participate in these ships, in these roles. That would be fine. But in terms of like all this balancing and stuff, incentivizing multiplayer gameplay, this is an MMO. I struggle to see how people thought the game would turn out any other way.
I think it's a product of just how the game's played for so long, which is
that's
sort
fair.
of
Yeah.
what makes people angry of almost all the changes, from the cargo stuff to the engineering to even to master modes. Like, the way that people generally respond to this stuff is, look at how it has been. It's not as much like, oh, this can't be designed well. And I think a lot of people recognize that this can work as an MMO, but like really like the idea of just being able to play solo. And I also think that people don't recognize how much you can still do playing solo.
Exactly, yeah. Like, to use World of Warcraft as an example, you can do literally everything in World of Warcraft solo, with the exception of dungeons and raids. Do you know how much content there is in those games in World of Warcraft that isn't dungeons and raids?
I imagine it's a lot at this point.
It is a lot. It is quite a lot of content.
It's been a while.
And even then, solo players still end up doing that content through things like the group finder, which, like, it's the amount of people that would probably play solo their entire time and would not want to group up with people. If it was easy to group up with people, if it was a literal click of a button group up with people, probably would. And then they would get to experience that content and see if they enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and also we saw that they're coming up with looking for group options for people. Like, and again, yes, like maybe you don't even want to interact with folks. But I think that this is different maybe for combat. But like, let's say you wanted to take part in a global event that's cargo related. You don't have to do anything with any people. You can still, like, you can add in without interacting with folks. And I think when it comes to like the mission contracts, they've talked about the player contracts, the like new form of beacons they're working on. They're offering this possibility for a solo player to take part in this kind of group focused gameplay without actually having to be part of the group, where you can just be assigned a mining mission from somebody, and it's still getting involved. But yeah, the idea that everything should be available to a solo player, it's just a little bit unrealistic, I think.
Yeah, and it's not even necessarily that. It's because, once again, I feel like CIG will find a way for everyone to experience all of the types of gameplay, including somehow doing multi-crew gameplay that way. But you should never expect to get the depth of that gameplay as you will if you're fully multi-crewed Javelin. right?
That's true. Yeah.
That is going to be a unique experience that CIG are likely going to incentivize people to do rather than 25 people soloing javelins with other parts of content. Maybe that's just extra content or, certain rewards and whatnot. So, yeah, I like CIG will not abandon solo players ever.
No.
They won't.
No.
They know who their backers are.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's nobody is ever in question of how many people like to play. Like, people will comment and be like, I think they're forgetting that how many people play solo. Nobody's forgetting that.
Yeah, no, exactly.
You look at engineering and you're panicking that it's going to make your solo flyable ship impossible to fly and it's going to be annoying and you're going to get glitches all the time. They're not going to do that. They understand that the game still has to be fun and enjoyable for people who are not interested in bringing someone else along.
Yeah. It's just with that in mind, they do want to make an MMO, and that means there needs to be certain concessions towards certain parts of content.
Yeah.
And capital ship gameplay, to bring it all the way back, is one of those things. You should never expect to see capital v capital of 2 solo players.